Mr. Speaker.
I call Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a previous contribution on a different bill, I talked about the two types of members' bills there are. There are the sort of political bills out there, the bills that essentially exist to get the name of the bill into the parliamentary ballot. I think Jacinda Ardern's bill about child poverty eradication would fall into that category. No one's really opposed to eradication and reduction, bill. No one's opposed to eradicating child poverty. In fact, everyone in this House is all in favour of eradicating child poverty. But of course, that bill just literally sets up a commission to examine the issue. It's a bit like her bill to get the Law Commission to draft a bill to introduce gay adoption. Or to legalise gay adoption. You know, the point of the bill is just to have the bill. So there's those sort of bills. And then there's the serious bills, and the House on Wednesday does consider a series of serious bills. And I would classify the bill that the House has considered a few moments ago about solar energy as one of those serious bills. Well-intentioned, and I understand it was defeated at first reading, but a serious bill to deal with quite an interesting issue in the electricity market. So how would I classify this bill? Well, I would say it's more sort of a halfway house bill because it is quite a political bill, and in that sense, and it's quite a simple bill. But I have to say, James Shaw is a well-intentioned guy, and I think the bill is well-intentioned, and it is a somewhat interesting issue that the House is dealing with. Mr. Terakatene just before made reference to fiduciary duties. And trusts having to act in the best interests of beneficiaries, and I'm not sure that was wholly on point to the bill, but I do agree with him that the purpose of the funds that the government has, like the New Zealand Superannuation Fund and the ACC Fund, their purpose must be to maximise returns for taxpayers and maximise returns for the people of New Zealand. And I do agree with the comments of my colleague David Seymour about how if we were to pass this bill, it would unnecessarily shackle the guardians, for example, of the New Zealand Super Fund, with that very tricky dual mandate, and would make it difficult for them to discharge their responsibilities. So the House only, I think, last month considered legislation, government legislation, to allow the guardians of the New Zealand Superannuation Fund to use something called fund investment vehicles, or FIVs, in the investment parlance. And that was a technical change to allow the guardians to use those vehicles to maximise returns for taxpayers. But everybody in the Parliament was at great pains to talk about the importance of the independence of the super fund and how wonderful the Cullen Fund was, and how Michael Cullen had the enormous foresight to set up this independent fund which would be at arm's length from politicians. Yes, Phil Goff saying all those things are true. All those things are true. That's exactly right. Michael Cullen also, incidentally, didn't support the government resuming contributions to the super fund. We didn't support the government borrowing billions of dollars to put into the super fund. In fact, he explicitly said that when he legislated for it at the time, which is in contrary to Labor Party policy currently, because they tend to go back and forth on that depending on who's the leader, and that changes about once a year. But anyway, that's just a side point. The critical point is everybody was at pains to talk about the independence of the fund and how it was important that politicians were at arm's length from it. And that's exactly right, sir. That's exactly the point, and that's exactly why this bill should be defeated. Thank you.